Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School, and what I'm doing today is I'm fooling around with the concept of how to make a hot tent or how to use a stove in a tent without a stove jack and just using a painter's canvas. So something I can do very cheaply. The stove that I'm using I picked up at a yard sale, and the canvas tarp, the painter's tarp, cost less than 20 bucks. So I'm playing around with the configuration. I'm testing how I can put a stove inside this thing and keep heat inside and keep from burning up the canvas at the same time, because I don't have a stove jack. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff, and I'm going to show you how I set this up. But right now I've kind of tested the concept behind the scenes already to make sure things were going to work. And there were some component parts that I needed for the stove that I didn't have laying around. Most of the stuff's already stuff I've recycled. But at this point, there are a couple pieces that I need, component parts, we'll talk about as we go, that I had to go out and purchase. So that cost me about 30 bucks. But I'm not going to have a whole lot in this setup, and that's kind of a permanent investment. Once you've done it kind of thing. So we'll talk about that as we go to, and I'll show you how I set this tarp up in this configuration to make a tent out of it, and also how to use a stove in it. So stay with me, guys. So we've got some fiberglass wrap around this pipe that's going to keep it from burning our canvas. And we're going to put some hose clamps on here to hold it on. I've already slid one to the inside, and I'm just going over the end of the pipe with this because they're plenty big till they're tightened up. And I'm going to slide one down inside a little further, and then I'm going to have one here at the very front. Now I'm not going to crank these down super duper tight, just tight enough that they're holding that fiberglass in place, but not tight enough to really constrict it too much. Now, as you can see, this piece of fiberglass wrap we've got here is what's going through our canvas exit that we've created here. We're going to button this down a little bit more in the end here to close this up a little bit. We'll toggle that in here in just a few minutes. Right now I just want to get this nice and secure, and then we got to get a spark arrestor on the outside, and then we'll be ready to kind of button it down and test it a little bit more. I did an initial burn on it this morning to make sure it was going to be okay, and it was. So I'll show you that on film as well. Again, I don't want to get this too super tight. I just want it tight enough to hold that thing in place and not slide up and down too much. Now this stove is a nice little stove. Like I said, this is a yard sale find. You've got a draft gate here on the bottom that you just slide up and down. It loads from the top. So you load the stove from the top, and it's got a grate that you can put in there to cook on. If you got coals bedded up in there, you can cook on this as well, or you can close it up, put your pots on top of it, whatever. And it has a carrying handle on it as well. It's a nice little stove. And again, yard sale find dirt cheap. So you can find stuff like this if you keep your eyes open. 3-inch pipe slides right over the top of the outlet. We're going up to an elbow and then out of the tent with it. Okay, so the things I had to purchase I didn't have laying around were a spark arrestor and a 90 degree, which will go here and here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the spark arrestor on top. And this thing does swivel like this, so you can position it where you want it. I want that thing fully 90 degrees straight up, just like that. But pretty much what I'm looking for is this right here, and I'm going to tape it up right there. All right, so we're just going to tape this bad boy up good here. And this tape's got a backing on it that you have to pull off as you go. Drop that thing on the ground for a minute so we can wrap it tight here. Just like that. We've got a bipod sitting here that we're holding it up with right now. Give ourselves a little overlap here, and then we should be able to tear that tape off. There we go. Now we'll get a piece that's long enough to go around our spark arrestor here, just like this. And hold it on, hold it in place. And that should keep us where we need to be. And now all we need to do is we need to secure this bipod so that it doesn't move. So we have a bipod in place right here. It's kind of holding this pipe, and it's a little bit off level here. So we want to get that right. Once we get that right, then we're going to be in good shape. Then we can stake this down so it doesn't move. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to stake this bipod down so that it can't move. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to drive a stake down straight beside this bipod leg, just like that. Then we're going to take a piece of string and wrap it around here, and we're going to tie an arbor knot in that piece of string. So we've got an overhand knot we tied over the string and an overhand stop knot. Pretty simple, really, just like that. And then we're going to crank that dude down on there tight, just like that, so that it can't move. Now that thing can't move side to side. And if we want to make sure that that doesn't go anywhere, we can back that up with a stop knot. So what we'll do is we will cut this string, and we'll just tie a stop knot in here and write it right down on top of that arbor knot, just like this, so that there's no way it can come undone or come loose without cutting it. Okay, now we want to secure this tripod straight down. It can't slide now because we've got it in place to where it can't move and spread out. Now we don't want it to tilt side to side. So we're just going to take our line real quick, tie a bowline loop in the end. Real fast, we're going to run that over the top to give ourselves a running bowline there. Give ourselves a little extra string and cut that off, just like this. Okay, so we drove a stake in the ground here, and the stake has a hole in it. We're just going to run our line through that hole, give ourselves a tensioning loop here, just like this. Come through that tensioning loop just like we would with a ridge line, and pull down on that rope tackle to get that good and secure. Pinch it off, and then tie it off just like we would if we were tying off a rope tackle. Put a slippery half hitch in that dude to lock it down. Get my fingers to operate here, just like that. And now we're good. If we want to back it up with a half hitch on the line, we can. I do that quite often with my ridge lines. Now, this is not going to move side to side, and we're good even in high wind. Okay, so before we burn this stove a little bit and see how that's going to work, I burned it for a couple hours this morning. Now I've done the improvements to it to make it what I want. I'm going to burn it for 3 or 4 more hours. And that's the key to this, is you don't test this stuff the night you're going to sleep in it. You test this stuff beforehand, because the last thing you want is to wake up with this whole tent on fire in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep. Not good. So we're testing and conceptualizing things beforehand. How I set this tent up is very, very simple. Again, this is a 9x12 painter's tarp. So what I did was I laid the 9-foot side across a normal ridge line. Same rapid deployment ridge line we teach here at school, same one we use all the time. Then I started putting toggles in this tarp because it doesn't have grommets or tie-out points in it. And those toggles are basically just small pieces of round stock that are held in place by a lark set knot. I'm going to show you that up close here in a minute. But the way this is set up is you put the 9-foot side across. You find the center of the tarp, and you stake the center of the tarp down on both sides. That gives you the doors or the flaps. And then you can adjust where those doors are going to land on the ground, and you're going to have a little overlap. And then you can toggle off your points at the top and tighten them out. So let's talk real quick about that real quick and finding that point, and then we'll move on from that. So what you can see up here where the stovepipe comes out is there, it's staked down to the ground in 2 places like doors that come together. And all I have to do is put more toggles in to button that down and close it around this pipe more. So if I loosen up this knot, what's going to happen is it's going to let go of this toggle that's in here. And this toggle, like I said, is just held on by a simple lark set knot. So all I've done is I've taken the line. This is my prusik loop. I've turned it over to make 2 ears, just like that. And I've wrapped that around the toggle and the tarp. So all I did was find the fold in here where I wanted to put that wooden toggle, and I just cut a small piece of round stock off a piece of arrow wood. We use that for construction here all the time. And I wrapped that in and then put those two ears, let's make those again real quick, put those two ears over the top of that toggle and tarp, just like this, and then tighten that down around the toggle, just like this, and then use my prusik to pull that tight. And that's going to pull against everything at one time, and it's not going to come loose that way. And I use this same exact system all over the tent. So let's talk about the center points and how those are staked out, and I'll show you how I did that too, because I just used two of the same exact knots to do that. Okay, now I'm going to pull this stake out real quick to show you this, and I use the same methodology to pull my stakes. I take a rope that's got a stop knot in both ends, a piece of paracord. I run a lark side knot over the top of the stake head just like that and pull it down. That stop knot will keep it from slipping through, and I can use that to pull the stake. Then I'll pull it out of this for a minute so you can see all of this again. All right, so we've got the same scenario here. We've just taken a toggling stick, put it in, figured out where we want that, put a lark set over the top of that, just like this. Gathered it around that lark set, or gathered it around that toggle, excuse me, just like this. And then all I did was I tied an overhand knot in those two lines. And if I want this to be shorter to get my stake closer to it, I can just put another fold over in that thing, just like this, with two ears, put my stake through that, and that's going to put me right up on top of that toggle. Then I just pulled it out and staked it in, just like that. It's real simple. Now, I'm going to pull this stake out real quick here. What I'm going to show you is that when you fold this in, this becomes your door. So if you take this straight to the ground, you're going to have some overlap of tarp to the inside, and this will be on your center line and become a door. So if you wanted to close this in, you could pull both sides of this in and you'd have like a double diamond. You'd have a V here and a V here that would connect at the center line of the tarp on the short side. The long sides are hanging over the top. If you want to open this thing up to give yourself some room or give yourself a little bit of an awning, you just figure out how open you want it and stake it down. You can always take that back out and readjust. So you can close those up a little bit to where you can just get inside, or you can open it up to where it's wide open depending on the weather. But giving yourself an open side like this gives you lots of room to work inside. So what I've done now is I've opened up the back side wide open to the corners with no overlap. So I've got this huge opening in the front. I can sit up inside, I can do work, I can cook, whatever I want. And the back side is closed in to hold in heat. And at night, I can move these in to close one door or overlap a little bit so that I only have one side that's open, or both sides closed if that's what I choose to do. Okay, so now we're going to button this up to hold a little more heat inside. And the way we're going to do that, again, we're going to take that same methodology. This time what we're going to do is we're going to take our line. I've just got a piece of bank line here. And we're going to tie a stop knot in the end of it. And what that's going to do is allow us to make a smaller lark's head knot. But when we pull that tight around that toggle and it slips in, what's going to happen is that knot, that stop knot, is going to slip up in there and it won't be able to move. And that's going to give us a tail that we can use to tie things off. So we'll just undo this real quick. Okay, so we're going to hold that lark's head in our hand and find the spot we want to put that toggle into. Kind of fold it down a little bit around it. Put that lark's head on there and start to ratchet that thing down a little at a time, just like this. And that will ride that stop knot up in there. You can see that stop knot hit it right there and it stopped dead. Okay, now if we put another one on the other side, we can just tie our ropes together. And there we go. Now we got her buttoned up. So we're just taking these two tails, putting them together, just tying a Regular knot in there like you tie your shoes with, a bow knot. And we'll do the same thing down here. Okay, I think we're ready to give this bad boy a run. So we're gonna open up the draft gate here. Pull our grill out for the moment, lay it to the side. Get some grass and bark down in here. And we'll put a few small sticks in there on top of that to give ourselves some fuel. Close this bad boy down and let her eat. Get some more fuel in that dude. I can see it drafting back there really well. That's a good thing. This thing's already putting out a crazy amount of heat. I had to take the hoodie off, take the hat off while I'm in here babysitting the stove. Got my hand, I don't know, 6-7 inches from it, and I can definitely feel there's more heat there than I want to touch for sure. It's burning clean now out of the pipe. There's not a lot of smoke coming out of it anymore. I'll let the stove draft a little bit and catch up, and we'll take a look inside. Okay, just a quick demo here on this stove pipe, show you where we're at. I'm gonna pour a little bit of water on there. You can hear that steaming right up. Now, I'm gonna put my hand right on this insulation and I'm gonna grab it. And you can see, it's not even, I mean, it's warm to the touch, but it's plenty comfortable to grab onto without a problem. 3 inches up the pipe, boils water. So this thing is what's protecting this canvas on the inside going to the stove from burning up. One of the things I thought was really cool about this stove is, like I said, once you got a coal bed built in there, you know, there's a cook rack. Fits right down inside that dude, just like that. And you can cook or boil right on top of that dude. Fix your coffee in the morning, cook a steak on that dude, cook a burger on it. No problem at all. Got the front of the tent open, don't have to worry about the carbon monoxide in here. So, yeah. It's a perfect little setup. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this video today real quick, showing you how to walk through setting up a tarp tent with a 9x12 painter's canvas and how to insulate that tent or insulate the stove pipe so that you could use a wood-burning stove inside that tarp safely. We've burnt this thing for about 3.5 hours now. I'm pretty confident that it's not going to be an issue. I've demonstrated some of those things on this video. I appreciate everything that you guys do for my school, for my business, all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.